I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. Welcome back to the channel! Recently, I purchased and made this dress pattern from the Prairie Misfit. If you've never seen her stuff, she makes really cute pieces and really great patterns that she sells on her website in both PDF and physical form. I got my dress pattern in physical form, and when it came, she had also included her witch's hat pattern, which by the way is such a sweet thing to do and so kind, and I immediately knew that I had to make it on the channel. She makes hers out of old quilts, but unfortunately my local thrift stores didn't have any quilts available, so I used cotton fabric. This is a really easy pattern that I think anyone could do. It's definitely beginner friendly, and she even offers a tutorial on her channel, which I'll link below. But because she does it with a quilt and I'm doing it with just thin cotton fabric, I thought I'd walk you through the process anyway. So with that being said, let's get into it. For materials, you'll need the following: pattern from the Prairie Misfit, a ½ yard of fabric or an old quilt, 1 yard of medium interfacing, thread, fabric scissors and or a rotary cutter and mat, pins or clips, quilt basting spray, or Elmer's washable glue or washable glue stick. I'll talk about that more when we get to it. She also says that you can use some thin cotton for the lining of the brim, but this is optional and I skipped it. Before starting any sewing project, make sure to wash, dry, and iron your fabric so it's ready to go. First, I read over the instructions to get an idea of what I was going to be doing, and then I cut out the paper pattern pieces. Then I put down the cone pattern piece and cut out the fabric. You will need 1 cone for your hat. Next, I folded my fabric in half and cut out the brim. By folding the fabric in half, I will end up with 2 brim pieces, which is what the pattern calls for. Then you're going to repeat the cutting process, but this time with your medium weight interfacing. Again, cutting 1 cone and 2 brim pieces. From there, pin the corresponding interfacing and pattern pieces, making sure that the wrong sides are together. When everything is in place, set your iron to steam, or put a damp towel on top of your pattern pieces and iron. Repeat this process with the remaining pattern pieces. Let's talk about quilt basting spray. This spray is used to provide a temporary washable hold for quilt layers before sewing. You will still do this step even if you're not using a quilt. Essentially, you spray on the wrong side of one of the brim pieces and then place the other brim piece on top of it, basically sandwiching the wrong sides together. I couldn't find any quilt basting spray locally, and online delivery would take a while, so I decided to do some research, and it turns out that a lot of quilters use Elmer's washable school glue or washable glue sticks. I had both on hand but decided to go with the glue stick since I felt I had more control over it and it dries faster. I applied it around the wrong side of my brim and placed the other on top. Then I put some books on top just to make sure it really dried in place, and it worked great for me. I think the Elmer's washable school glue would work better for quilts or thicker fabrics, but if you're using a thinner fabric like I am, the glue stick will be just fine. Just make sure it's washable. Now it's time to sew. First, you're going to fold the cone in half, right sides together, lining up the sides, and sew at 3/8 seam allowance. She recommends starting from the bottom up, so that's what I did. And then I flipped my cone inside out. Now I'm going to attach the cone to the brims that I glued together, which may sound intimidating, but I'm going to break it down for you. Lay your brim on the table and decide what your front and back are. Place your cone on top of the brim so it's standing up with the seam at the back of the brim. Then pinch the bottom of the cone at the back seam along the brim, flip it over, and pin or clip it. Then you're going to go in and sew the cone to the brim at 3/4 inch seam allowance. My machine doesn't have the clearest markings, so I take a piece of masking tape and line it up across the machine so I can see what I'm doing. The next 2 steps are optional: sewing the headband and serging or zigzag stitching the brim. I did the first one by turning that headband on the inside up into the cone and then sewing around the outside at 3/8 inch seam allowance. It looks nice, but I also think it adds a touch more stability to the base of the cone. As for the second step, I went around the brim of my hat with a zigzag stitch since I don't have a serger. You could also have used pinking shears when cutting out your fabric to avoid this step. You've reached the last sewing step, folding over the brim 1 inch onto the other side and then sewing that down at 3/4 inch seam allowance. I think this is the trickiest part and would recommend going slow to make sure you are doing this as evenly as possible as you go around the brim. Then you iron the brim well and you're all done. Which means it's time for the reveal. As you can see, the project was so fun and fast that I ended up making 2 hats. In fact, the most time-consuming portion of this project was locating my spool of thread after my cat ran off with it and knocked it under the dryer. She was really proud of herself. Anyway, I added a black velvet ribbon to the hat just for a little something extra, which is also a great way to distract from any uneven sewing you may have done. For the second hat, I added in a little chin strap ribbon as well. I love that these are kind of like a hybrid witch sun hat situation, and I kind of want to make one out of an old towel for when I want to do some poolside witching. For now, these are perfect for fall, and while I still hope to make it with a quilt, I may first attempt to make a reversible version so I can have multiple options. Again, I found this to be an easy pattern and project to do. The Prairie Misfit did such a great job with this, which isn't surprising as this is my second time sewing one of her patterns and I will forever be a fan. Tell me how you would make this at home. Would you use an old quilt? Would you use cotton fabric like I did? Or would you use something else entirely? I'd love to know, so let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!